All right. Good morning. This is March 17th, 2020. This is Greg and Amethyst Dixon from Life Origami. We're here today to do a bit of a quick overview about responding to the COVID-19 crisis from a business point of view. Now, what we're going to do, this is going to be a general overview. What we're going to do is just kind of cover in general, and then we'll do 4 separate videos to cover each of these areas. So obviously, because of the very rapidly developing situation and the fact that nobody I think has done any planning, we have to both respond and react. We need to think about the people that our business touches. We need to develop specific scenarios because even though the situation's evolving very quickly, I believe this has the potential to change the very nature of business something on this scale can't help but change the way we view business, to change the way we communicate with people, and change perhaps the way business is done. This is business not as usual. There are considerations that we need to take into account. So just to do a really quick overview, and by the way, we're going to try to make this as widely available and for free as possible. This is our gift to you as an entrepreneur. The thing that I think about is to avoid overwhelm. It's not your friend, right, Amy? I mean, because when we get into overwhelm, we get into our primal brain. We are now. That being said, it's hard to prevent overwhelm, but the most important thing to do is to be present. To be present, you have to deal with, it's very important to deal with the way things are. So on the reaction side of the equation, there's immediate concerns. So the immediate concerns we would think about is safety. There's your health, obviously, and food. And the other thing is that what we're starting to see is that in light of this is that we need to have a plan. They're calling it shelter in place. Yesterday, the state of California, I think they asked, something like 7 million people to shelter in place in I think it was Seattle, in San Francisco area. So we need to be sheltering in place. You need to figure out what that means for your team. So obviously on the people side of things, you have your customers, obviously. You also have your staff. And you have probably suppliers as well that you may need to communicate with, and you may need to figure out how to work with them in a different way. In terms of scenarios, is to look at what you think the worst case scenario is going to be, to look at the best case scenario, and obviously, what is the current situation? What is the current situation, and how could that change? Which probably is one of the most difficult things to try to anticipate. So, as I said earlier, this is business not usual. business as usual. It's business not as usual. So there's, in terms of the business itself, obviously there's the financial aspect of the business. You need to expect pressure, financial pressure, and perhaps pressure to perform depending on your business. You may be a business that people really rely on. I mean, I would suggest every business is a business that people rely on, but there are some that are more more prone to people having expectations of certain to respond in certain ways. So obviously, we need to have an approach to communications, a communications plan. You need to look at your infrastructure needs. Obviously, the basic things like power, computers, phones, those sorts of things are important. But as well, there's your building or office. You're building an office, the physical plant. There's security that's going to perhaps you need to change there. There's you may have people that can work from home, and in terms of if they're going to work in the office, what changes do you need to make there? Now, I realize this is very, very high level, not very specific, but the most important tip I can give you, that confusion is the enemy. And what we want you to do, what my number one recommendation would be, is to seek clarity. Clarity is the answer to all confusion. Confusion is the enemy, because when we get into confusion, Amethyst, what happens when we get overwhelmed, when we feel panic and fear?
Well, what happens is we start to react rather than respond, and we're using the primal part of our brain. Now, what that means is that we're creating stress hormones. Now, stress hormones, they affect our body, and that includes the ability for our brain to function. And how that works is we have all our organs are affected by these stress hormones, and we have what you call the second brain, and that is our stomach. Now, the reason why the stomach is important is there are neurotransmitters. 95% of the neurotransmitters needed, essential for our brain, come from the nerve cells in our stomach. So if our stomach is responding to stress hormones and our the flora is all upset, then it's important that we take care of how we are responding or reacting to what's coming at us. So when we're confused and we're using the primal part of the brain, we're not using different parts of the brain that are important, where we have already in place neural pathways so that we can access all parts of the brain, so that we can have clarity, so we can problem solve, so we can be at our best as we need it.
Right.
And things are changing right now by the day. So confusion, it's hard when we are confused. It's hard to make good decisions, and if we're making decisions that are rash, out of fear,
It's normal. You should expect to feel some fear and panic and overwhelm.
of course.
That's normal. I think that the thing is that I just really want to encourage people to recognize confusion and say no to it. And the way we say no to confusion is we seek clarity. And when we seek clarity, the most important thing to do is identify, I'm going to put it down here, what's the result? What's the outcome that you're seeking? The outcome is most important, because if you get clear about the result or outcome that you want, that result or outcome can literally obliterate confusion, because you're once you get clear about the result and outcome, it reframes your point of view. So you want to really keep the result or outcome you want in your mind. So if you want, for example, some of the results or outcomes you might consider is maybe the result or outcome is you want people to work from home. Maybe you want to, as much as possible, maybe because you're a grocery store, because you're a pharmacy or whatever, you plan to, you're doing everything you can to keep business as normal as possible, to maintain operations. That's a very different perspective than if you choose to lock the doors, perhaps. So maybe because, during H1N1 here in Canada, pharmacies were basically closed, right, Amy?
Well, I had H1N1, and when I needed medication, I had to call to the clinic and let them know that I needed to come in to get some Ventolin so I could breathe well. And
Not like that's urgent at all. Jeez.
so I went into the clinic. They knew I was there. They rushed me into the back of the room after they gowned me up and everything. And then they phoned the pharmacy. I went to the pharmacy. They were already expected. They filled out my order. I had to ring a doorbell. I rang a doorbell, and then they passed me my medication and everything. And everything was, at the
Right.
time, e-transfer. I can't remember. No, they didn't have e-transfer back then. Way
That
back
wasn't even
then.
that long ago. So
No, some other way.
Things change quickly. Things are going to change quickly on the financial side of the business. Your cash flow is going to change, and there's probably emergency assistance. I know in Canada, the Business Development Bank of Canada and the central bank and the government has freed up about $300 billion of additional lending capacity for the banks. Those emergency considerations.
On the life level, with stress, we're talking about fear. How we can tell what we're having all this tension and the attention. How we can tell the difference between whether we're in fear is and whether we're excited is whether we're breathing, how we're breathing.
Good point. Very good point.
Whether we're breathing really shallow, we're feeling tense and we're feeling fear. If we're able to breathe calmly, then we know that we're responding, and that sometimes tension can be our friend. And the reason that is because tension, like an elastic band, it seeks resolution. If you stretch on an elastic band, it will naturally want to come forward again, release, right?
Yep.
And so tension is the same way. It's your friend. It tells you that there's a gap, something that needs to be solved, and there is a way to bridge this fear gap.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in one of our next Linea videos, we're going to discuss bridging the fear gap. Now, this is something we teach in coaching, but as a gift to the we're going to the public, we're going to discuss this, bridging the fear gap, and how to deal with stress and fear.
So we're also going to try to keep these videos really short. So I want to end this now, but where I want to end, unless you have something else, Amy, I want to say that at any time you can take a 10-second holiday.
Yes.
You can breathe. And it's probably the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for others is to stay present. Because if you take a breath, and we'll cover that, just take a breath and focus on your body. Just do that for now. Take 10 seconds. Tell people you need a moment. Give yourself permission to take a 10-second breathing holiday and just get present, get back in your body. So we will put this up on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter. We'll put links up on Twitter and LinkedIn. And let us know if you have any questions, you need some support. If you've got a complex situation, you need some support, just reach out to us. We can be reached at 403-307-8255. 8281. You can reach us at Life Origami on Twitter, Facebook, and lifeorigami.com. Again, that number, 403-307-8281. We're here for you. You're stronger than you realize. You know more about how to handle this situation than you even believe. It's just everything's changed. And accept that. And it'll make life a lot easier. He says as he ends the video.